The prairie wind swept across the wide open land, carrying with it the scent of sun-baked earth, hay, and distant pines. The sky stretched endlessly in every direction, painted in soft shades of peach and early gold. It was summer, the season when life slowed down and the evenings held long silences filled only by the rustling of grass and the hum of cicadas. For most, it was peaceful. For Leah Carter, it felt like a storm waiting to break. She hadn't planned to return to Willow Creek Ranch. Not after leaving at 19 with dreams bigger than the dusty road that led away from it. Not after promising herself she would never look back. But promises made by young hearts rarely survive the years that follow. And life, with its unexpected turns and bruised edges, had brought her home once more, this time with uncertainty heavy in her chest and questions she didn't know how to face. Her boots sank into the soft summer dirt as she walked toward the barn. The sun was still climbing, warm but not yet scorching. She brushed a loose curl away from her cheek and exhaled slowly. Everything looked the same, the barn, the windmill, the horses grazing lazily near the fence line, yet it all felt different somehow. Smaller. Quieter. Or maybe it was her who had changed. Then she saw him. Wyatt Kane. The old rancher. Though calling him old felt wrong the second the thought crossed her mind. Yes, his hair carried the silver of seasons lived, and his hands were rough from decades of work, but his posture was strong, his stride steady, and his presence, commanding in a way that demanded respect long before a word was spoken. He was kneeling beside a bale of hay, tightening the twine, focused and patient. The morning light hit him just right, tracing the lines time had etched along his jaw, his brow, his sun-worn cheeks. Leah hesitated only a moment before stepping closer. "Morning," she said, voice soft, unsure. Wyatt paused, turned slightly, and looked up at her with eyes warm as desert whiskey. Recognition came slow but certain. "Well," he drawled, wiping his hands on his vest, "if it ain't little Leah Carter all grown up." She rolled her eyes, softly, not truly annoyed. "I'm 32, Wyatt. Little doesn't exactly fit anymore." He stood, stretching his back, and gravity seemed to bow to him rather than the other way around. "You're still young enough to be trouble," he said, half teasing, half meaning. Their eyes held, and in that single still second, memories returned, sunset rides, teasing arguments, long talks by the creek, and the unspoken thing that lingered between them back then. The thing she left behind. She swallowed. "I didn't think anyone would be here this early." Wyatt chuckled. "Ranch don't run on city hours. Sunrise waits for no one." His tone was light, but there was curiosity behind it. Leah knew he deserved an explanation, but she wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, she nodded toward the hay bale he'd been working on. "Need help?" Wyatt raised a brow. "Sure you remember how?" Her answer was instant. "Try me." Minutes later, they worked side by side. Leah tugged, lifted, and adjusted the hay bales while Wyatt guided with quiet instructions. It felt familiar, like slipping into a pair of worn boots molded perfectly to the foot. But it wasn't long before Leah felt the strain. City life didn't prepare her for ranch work, and her muscles reminded her quickly. Wyatt noticed. "Take a breath, Leah. You're not racing the wind." She huffed, brushing her hair back. "I could handle this just fine when I was younger." A smirk tugged at his mouth, slow, knowing. "And I could lift 3 of these at once when I was younger. Time changes the rules. That don't mean we stop playing." Leah paused, letting his words settle deeper than she expected. "You still talk like some kind of Western fortune cookie," she said with a soft laugh. Wyatt shrugged. "Comes from spending too much time with horses. They don't understand complicated." They continued working, not speaking much, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick with history, unanswered questions, and something else, something neither of them wanted to name just yet. Then it happened. Leah hoisted a bale wrong and lost balance. Before she could fall, Wyatt steadied her, hands firm around her arm and waist. The touch sent a breath of electricity through her chest, sudden and undeniable. "You all right?" he asked, voice low. She nodded, though her voice barely worked. "Yeah, just misjudged the weight." Wyatt held her a second longer, long enough for her cheeks to flush, before releasing her gently. You used to be stubborn as a wild colt, he said. Seems not much has changed. Leah shot him a glance. Would you rather I'd become quiet and helpless? Wyatt studied her, not with judgment, but with a depth that made her heart tighten. No, he said slowly. I always liked the fire in you. She blinked, taken off guard. He wasn't a man who wasted words, especially compliments. But before she could respond, he walked toward the barn doors. Come on. Horses need fresh feed, and I'm sure you didn't come back here just to wrestle hay. The statement lingered, because he was right. She hadn't returned for hay, or even the ranch. She'd come because her world had fallen apart. Because she needed somewhere safe, something steady. Something, or someone, real. Wyatt had always been that. Even now, years later. As they fed the horses, Leah finally spoke the truth, slowly pulling at her ribs. I lost my job, she murmured. The company shut down. And then, the apartment lease ended. Everything happened so fast. I didn't know where else to go. Wyatt didn't look surprised. Or pitying. Instead, he leaned against the stall, arms folded, and nodded once. So you came home? Leah swallowed. Yeah. I guess I did. Wyatt's voice dropped, not softer, but warmer. Well, you got space here. You always did. The simplicity of it broke something inside her, not in a painful way, but in the way walls crumble when they finally don't need to stand anymore. Tears burned at the corner of her eyes, but she blinked them back. Thank you, she whispered. Wyatt tipped his hat, slow, respectful. No need for thanks. You just remember, no matter how long you're gone, Willow Creek always keeps its own. Leah smiled then, real, unguarded. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Maybe she always had. That evening, the sky burned in streaks of orange and pink as they wrapped up the work. The air hummed with. Jonah didn't look at her, he scanned the trail ahead. For now. But tonight decides everything. Once they reached a sheltered spot under a line of cottonwood trees along a narrow creek, Jonah helped the girls drink, then built a tiny fire hidden under rocks. As the flames flickered, the girls finally spoke more clearly. They told Jonah the truth. They had been kidnapped not by settlers, but by a rogue militia working with the sheriff, men who wanted to start a war between the Apache and the ranchers so they could seize land, cattle, and mining routes under the excuse of protection. The 5 girls had seen them burning a wagon caravan belonging to a cattle trader, making it look like an Apache attack. When the girls tried to escape, they were caught, dragged to town, and used as proof that the Apache were behind the violence. Jonah's jaw tightened as he listened. Names, he said flatly, and the eldest whispered the name of the militia's leader, Colton Briggs, one of the richest and most ruthless men in the territory, who also happened to be the man the sheriff secretly answered to. Jonah cursed under his breath. He knew Briggs. Everyone did. A man with 100 armed men and no moral compass. Jonah stood slowly, staring into the darkness where distant torchlights flickered along the horizon like evil fireflies. They were coming. The girls saw it too, fear rippled through them like wine through tall grass. Zana clutched Jonah's sleeve. We should run. Jonah shook his head. They'll track us. And I don't run from men like them. He knelt down, meeting each girl's trembling gaze. You're safe. Not because the world is kind, but because I am not afraid of the men hunting us. His words were heavy, steady, and the fire painted him in shades of steel and shadow. But Jonah knew they couldn't stay here. They needed help, Apache help. He whistled sharply into the night, a sound that echoed through the canyon. Moments later, a tall figure emerged from the shadows, Gray Eagle, an Apache scout Jonah had once saved years ago during a border skirmish. The girls gasped in relief, they knew him. Gray Eagle embraced his people, checking their injuries before turning to Jonah with fire in his eyes. You saved them, he said. Jonah shrugged. Couldn't let children hang. Gray Eagle nodded once. Then we fight together. The Apache warrior signaled into the dark, and soon, 3 more scouts appeared, silent as ghosts, armed with bows and long knives. Jonah outlined the truth quickly. Briggs' militia planned to kill them all before dawn to erase witnesses. Gray Eagle's jaw hardened. Then Briggs dies today. they moved quickly. Jonah mounted his horse again, lifting 2 girls in front of him while Grey Eagle and the other scouts guided the remaining 3 on foot through a hidden path that climbed the cliffside. As they reached the ridge, they saw the militia below, dozens of riders, torches blazing, guns glinting under the moon. "They think we're running west," Jonah whispered. "So we go east." He turned his horse sharply, heading toward a narrow slot canyon known only to the Apache and a few ranchers. Grey Eagle led the way, his sharp eyes finding hidden cracks and ledges. But Briggs' men were faster than Jonah expected. Soon gunshots cracked through the night, bullets sparking off rocks. One of the girls screamed, ducking as Jonah shielded her with his arm. He fired back twice, hitting one rider and forcing the others to scatter. "Move!" Jonah roared, and the group dashed through the canyon, dust exploding around them. The chase grew brutal, hard turns, rock slides, the thunder of horses behind them, but Jonah stayed at the rear, defending the girls with every shot. At last they burst out onto a high plateau where the moon lit the world in silver. Grey Eagle skidded to a stop, raising his hand. "We stand here," he said. Jonah nodded, knowing there was no more running. He set the girls behind a large boulder, telling them firmly, "Stay down, keep quiet, and trust me." Then he joined the Apache warriors at the edge of the ridge. Below, Briggs' men poured into the clearing like an angry river. At their center rode Colton Briggs himself, thick beard, long black coat, shotgun across his lap, arrogance dripping from every word as he called out, "Hail! Give me the girls, and maybe I'll let you die quick." Jonah stepped forward so the moon framed him like a ghost risen from the earth. "Come take them," he replied. Briggs snarled, raising his hand. "Kill them all." The night exploded into chaos. Apache arrows rained down first, silent and deadly, dropping riders left and right. Jonah fired with deadly precision, each shot echoing like thunder in the canyon. The militia tried to charge up the ridge, but the narrow path forced them into a choke point, exactly where Jonah wanted them. Grey Eagle's warriors ambushed from above, unleashing a second wave of arrows. Horses reared, men screamed, and Briggs shouted orders that no one obeyed in the panic. Jonah leapt down onto a lower shelf, firing point blank at 2 gunmen, then tackled another with raw force, wrestling him over the edge. Dust and gunpowder filled the air, turning the battlefield into a storm of shadows and fire. Briggs finally made his way up the path, roaring with fury, shotgun aimed at Jonah's chest. Jonah ducked behind a rock just as Briggs fired, the blast tearing stone apart inches from Jonah's head. Jonah rolled, fired twice, missing in the chaos, and Briggs charged like a bull, tackling Jonah hard enough to knock the wind out of him. The 2 men crashed into the dirt, fists flying, grunts echoing into the night. Briggs was bigger, heavier, and fueled by rage. He slammed Jonah's head into the ground once, twice, until blood blurred Jonah's vision. "You should have stayed on your damn ranch," Briggs snarled, pulling a knife. But before the blade fell, a scream cut through the night. Not a scream of fear, one of anger. "Zana!" The eldest Apache girl rushed out from cover, grabbing Briggs' arm. She couldn't overpower him, but she gave Jonah the second he needed. Jonah surged upward, twisted the knife free, and drove his elbow into Briggs' jaw. The warlord stumbled. Jonah grabbed him by the coat, spinning him toward the cliff edge. "This ends now," Jonah growled. Briggs spit blood and hatred, but Jonah didn't give him another second. With one final shove, Briggs fell backward off the ridge, disappearing into the darkness below. Silence followed. A long, heavy silence. Then Grey Eagle lifted his blade toward the moon. "The land breathes again," he said. The remaining militia fled into the night, leaderless and broken. The battle was won. Jonah collapsed to one knee, breath harsh, body bruised from head to toe. Zana and the girls ran to him, helping him stand. "You saved us again," she whispered. Jonah gave a tired smile. "You saved me too." Grey Eagle approached, resting a hand on Jonah's shoulder. "You have the heart of a warrior," he said. "And the Apache do not forget their friends." Jonah nodded. "Just make sure these girls get home." Grey Eagle promised they would, and as dawn slowly painted the sky with soft orange light, the 5 Apache girls, no longer victims, but survivors, began the journey back to their village under the protection of their people. Jonah watched them go, leaning against a boulder, pain shooting through his ribs but peace settling in his heart. He had stood against evil, protected the innocent, and set the truth free. And as the rising sun warmed the canyon walls, Jonah Hale, rancher, warrior, legend, mounted his horse and rode toward home, knowing the West would sing this story for generations. And if you want more powerful Wild West stories like this, stories of courage, justice, danger, and heroes who rise when no one else will, then hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Aap ka ek click humian or a cinematic kahanian banain ka hausla dita hai. Don't miss the next story. The frontier is full of miracles, battles, and unforgettable legends.